Hello and welcome to Inside the Huddle, where we're going to look ahead to week 9 in the NFL. I'm your host, Neil Reynolds, joined as ever by Phoebe Schechter. Phoebe, we are rattling through these weeks, and on and off the field, the headlines keep coming. We're going to discuss all of them here.
Yeah, I know we always have our what you notice, things on our radar, and I feel like my list is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, the storylines are wild, incredible, amazing that keep coming out of the NFL, but it makes it so fascinating. I mean, it's not dropped its excitement whatsoever this season.
No, it really hasn't. So, we're going to talk a little bit of news. We're going to do the things we've noticed, what's on our radar, and we'll look ahead to some of the games in week 9, including our Sky games, as we'll be back on air at 5 o'clock. Games will kick off at 6, back to our regular programming. But let's start with Anthony Richardson, Phoebe, the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, who is no longer their starting quarterback. He's been benched for Joe Flacco, 39 years of age. Now, this is coming off the back of a very, very poor run of form. I mean, he's just not got up to where they expected him to be. But there's a little bit more to this, isn't there? Because he tapped out of the game against the Houston Texans last week on 3rd and goal because he was tired and admitted to it afterwards. So is it the poor play? Is it because he was tired and tapped out? What do you think?
I mean, interestingly enough, when Richardson was told he was benched, they didn't actually tell him why. So he said he had no idea really what it could be, which is always fascinating to me. But honestly, you have to think about it in the sense, and I know so many people have said it now, but when he's standing there in front of the media, I appreciate the authenticity, right? We always talk about that, tell the truth, but just lie. In that one
Got
situation,
to tell a lie.
just
Absolutely.
don't tell people the truth at all. I mean, so I think there's that bit which just kind of shows a bit of immaturity. I think you look at the fact that on the field he taps out because he's tired. One, yes, he did have a big play. He had a defensive lineman on his back essentially when he pulled him down, but it almost says to me he has no awareness of the down and distance or anything like that when your next play is 3rd and goal and you just can't stand for that. And so, I mean, there's so many things that come off the back of this. What does it mean to the rest of your team? Because ultimately, Neil, if it was you and you're a quarterback and you're like, oh guys, I just need to rip out right quick. Like I'm feeling really tired. Jason and I would look at each other and be like, I mean, we got you, but are you sure?
Yeah, I think when you put it in context, as and I wrote about this week, and I didn't want to sound like a grumpy old man, but I'm sure I did. But you're not dragging Brett Favre off the field. Joe Montana on the winning drive in a Super Bowl against the Bengals admitted that he almost passed out and he couldn't see. Fired one pass over Jerry Rice's head just to throw it as far out of bounds until his vision returned because he was hyperventilating and he was struggling to see, but he didn't take himself out of the game. This is the 105th season in the NFL. I've never read about it. I've never heard about it. I've never seen players talk about it. And people I've talked to this week have never seen or heard of it. I think this is something quite unique and quite damning for the young quarterback.
Yeah, I don't know how you come back from it. I know, Shane Steichen, their head coach, has talked about, obviously giving Joe the job because he's earned it. But when he's asked about, well, when is, Anthony Richardson coming back, just keeps saying, well, we will see. I can't predict anything. When you worry, you genuinely think, well, what could this mean for him? Because this says so much about you in terms of your character, what you're, it's almost selfish really to be in that position and do that to the rest of your team. So I think there's just so many things that come off the back of it. Yes, it's just a little media hit, but actually the depth of what it means is so much greater.
Yeah, because it makes him look. I think even the fact he doesn't know why he was benched. I think a lot of quarterbacks would demand to know why they were benched. I think it's almost like he doesn't take it that seriously. Now, it just feels that way when you watch him and how he speaks. And then on the field, Phoebes, he's never been as progressed as they would have hoped. He's always felt like he was behind. Obviously, he only played 4 games last year before the shoulder injury. He's very, very hit and miss. I mean, completion percentage in the 40s when you've got Jaden Daniels in the 70s is kind of just one example of that.
Yeah, it's definitely been a very tumultuous career so far. And, you he knows that he's a good player in the sense that he knows he can be physical. It was
Yeah,
really interesting listening to him because he said he pretty much runs the ball better than any other quarterback except for Lamar. But I find that hard to believe because yes, he's running because he's physical, but I don't think he necessarily has the football IQ at times to be
right.
able to make some of those smarter decisions. So, I think when he talks like that, it shows where he sees he is. And it's almost like he doesn't see the reality of where he is and where the team are at. And, that's kind of concerning. And I mean, look, we'll see. I really hope that he takes this as an opportunity to grow and develop and learn because that's what he needs to see this as. Not thinking that, hey, it's just 1 week off. I'm going to play next week. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think they probably we saw him on the field at the draft. Remember at the flag event, and he was like, we were like, wow, that's a quarterback. So
Yeah.
and then he's launching 70-yard passes in his workouts and everything. So I think they fell in love with the kind of physical player that he could become. So that's one thing. I think maybe they've been, hoodwinked a little bit there because there wasn't as much college game tape. He hadn't played a lot in high school, but they were hoping he'd become something. Maybe
Yeah.
this now changes the time scale, and to develop him. They sit him for this season, but then I'd ask how much can you develop someone in a season when you're trying to you've got to be all about Joe Flacco now.
Yeah. And the energy has to go towards Joe Flacco. And, what happens also off the field in the sense of, okay, so are you going to say to Joe Flacco, hey, you need to be the one that's mentoring, you know, mentoring Anthony Richardson? I don't know. I would hope that you have another backup in the building that almost takes on that role to teach him how to be a professional because in some ways it almost feels like he still acts like a bit of a college kid and you've not had many games in the NFL. You said earlier the injury last year you missed the majority of it. This year you've been on and off anyways. I mean, I just think he needs a lot more of understanding and yes, he's got the strength, yes, he's got the speed, but how do you present yourself? How do you lead a team? Because that's those intangibles, those are things that he really needs to work on.
Yeah, he needs a lot of lessons in that department, given what happened last weekend. Let's talk about some things we noticed then. So these are things we might have seen on social media in the last few days. They're not news, but they are news. Phoebe, what did you see?
So I've got a couple. And I'll just list them out because the
No, I tell
madness
you
that
what.
comes this
I
week.
tell you what, you bail me out, Phoebe, because the only thing I've been buried in writing this week is mine would be Tyreek Stevenson, and we did that on Monday. So why don't we just do your two here? You're going to help me out.
Fine. Well, one of them is media related, so perfect. First one I had was Trevon Diggs after the game for the Cowboys game, fighting with the media
Yeah.
over something that he tweeted online. There's so many questions around that. He's just come off the field. Why are you arguing with the media? Why are you checking your phone? All these questions. And then yesterday he gifted the person from the media he was fighting with a bag of peanuts. So
Oh
that was
no.
him making amends with with the
Is he
reporter.
though, or is that throw? It feels like that's throwing shade as well somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even say the name of the peanuts on the air. So
Okay.
it was probably just being cheeky as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it just speaks to what's happening in the Cowboys organization anyways, in terms of he's coming up the field, he's so stressed. I think it's a frustration more than anything, and then you just find somebody else to take it out on.
Yeah, I mean that one with that scene. When you look at that, the reporter's clearly waiting outside the locker room to go in. The player can go in, and there's a cooling off period, as you know. That's the whole point of the cooling off period, to avoid things like that. So yeah, Trayvon Diggs didn't help himself, and I'm sure players get frustrated by some of what the local reporters write at times. Yeah, I'm sure that happens all the time, but that's why these procedures are in place. Get yourself in the locker room, calm down, and then answer your questions.
Exactly. Exactly. See, you would have done a great job. You would have been nailing it.
I'd have been all right there. No, and I like peanuts, so either way, I'd have been winning. So,
Exactly.
what, what was your other one?
Uh, Kind of similar. This one was in the Bills Seahawks game last week. The Seahawks players were fighting each other. There was a late hit on
Yes,
Josh Allen, but it
really.
was the Bills players that went over and started to break up their own fight. the Bills players were breaking up the fight between the two Seahawks players. And
Wow.
I mean, it's just, I mean, well done by the Bills players by seeing what was going on. And, Josh Allen was fine, but I think it was, that veteran player trying to just say to the youngin, like, you don't do that. You're going to get yourself in trouble. It's not worth it. But it escalates so quickly. And it's just the passion that football brings out of you. They just couldn't help themselves. So, but again, not
No,
a great sign for a team that was, kind of being stomped on in their at home, essentially.
I think it always things like that just speak to a wider frustration. I know sometimes players will say, "Oh, well, it was in the moment and it's a heated place on the sideline." But if it was an in the moment regular thing, we'd see it every week. The fact is, we don't see players fight from their own team fighting each other every week. So when we do, I think it speaks to something bigger, and so it does become an issue.
Yeah, exactly. And it's precisely that. And, when you feel like you've got no answers at all on the test, I think you just need to take it out somewhere. And yeah, so it was always neat to see. And then the last one I wanted to bring up, and I was mad I didn't bring up last week, but I felt like you would appreciate this. There was this great moment last week between Aaron Rodgers and Coach Tomlinson on the sideline. Coach Tomlinson was trying to get Aaron Rodgers trying to get the Steelers with 12 men on the field, and Tomlinson called a timeout. And there's this little like head nod to each other where he's like, "I see what you're trying to do. You almost got me
I
there."
love
And I
it.
loved it.
It was a great chess match, and Rogers just gave him the like little nod. Obviously, not giving him too much because he was probably annoyed that he got him. But it was a brilliant moment in the Jets Steelers game. You're right. It was. I did see that. I enjoyed that, and I like the fact that that's a reminder that there's kind of a chess match, but a great respect as well when you got those kind of people going head to head. On our radar. So these are the things we're looking at, maybe for this weekend, maybe for the coming weekend. So I'll kick us off here with a question. Are the Philadelphia Eagles going to get Doug Pederson fired a second time? Eagles play the Jags this week.
Oh my gosh.
You want a Super Bowl with yeah.
Saquon Barkley is going to run all over them, and it is going to be scary. I,
These are the devious little headlines I look for, you see. These are the
I,
devious little headlines.
I love it. I love that you're like snaking around trying to figure it out. But this is true, right? I mean, honestly, we thought they came back from London, did a great job, had this great success. Thought they're going to continue that on, and they just can't pull it together. I don't see them being able to string an entire positive season together.
No,
And
they're sorry, I was just going to say they're the epitome of that was last week. They're down by 10 in the fourth quarter. They come back, tie the game inside the final 2 minutes. First thing you do, give up a 51-yard pass down the field, and Trevor Lawrence never sees the field again. They kick a field goal.
exactly. And that's where I think ownership at that point has to be thinking, this is not our future. And you never want a head coach get fired. But I think honestly, if the Eagles come in there and run all over them, you're week 9, you're halfway in the season. Are you thinking this is going to get better with your current leadership? I don't really think it is at this point, unfortunately.
No, and you wonder what the future is in Jacksonville, where they just traded away their left tackle, Cam Robinson, to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, they weren't probably going to pay him a big long-term deal anyway, but that's your starting left tackle. So, again, they've got maybe one eye on 2025. What's on your radar, Phoebe?
So something that we had kind of talked about a little bit earlier in the week, and it's a conversation around QB development. So in terms of with Anthony Richardson being benched, for example, kind of looked around to see the ages and the other quarterbacks that are notable that have been benched so far. So you've got Richardson at 22, Bryce Young at 23, Trey Lance 24, Justin Fields 25, Zach Wilson 25, Mac Jones 26, Kenny Pickett 26. All these guys sat on the bench. And I do think there's a real conversation around quarterback development. What are we doing in the league? The guys that seem to be the most successful are your Mahomes who sat and learned, your Jordan Loves who sat and learned, Josh Allen's, Lamar Jackson's, all these guys that had a little bit of time to get acclimated into the NFL. And I think if people really were to evaluate what's happening, yes, you get your outliers. Don't get me wrong. Jaden Daniels, your CJ Strouds. However, I think we do really have to start thinking, what are we doing for the young quarterbacks coming into the league, and what is their experience before they even get here?
Um, I think I think that's where NFL Europe is a massive miss, a development league, and I don't think the NFL is fully in with some of the spring leagues enough to say, right, take Trey Lance. We trust me, we had in NFL Europe, we had Achilles Smith, who was a third overall pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. He tried to resurrect his career with the Frankfurt Galaxy. So we have had big names in Europe, and I think there's not enough. You can't do that with the spring leagues. I feel like there's no kind of developmental league, and where it hits hardest. And I was always told this around the time we always paid attention to the quarterbacks, but the offensive linemen were developed so much in NFL Europe, and I think there's a weakness at quarterback, especially there's a glossy top to the NFL's quarterbacks, and then when we get to week 10, week 12, week 14, and we're into the backups, we're like, wow, there's a huge drop. And the offensive line play around the NFL has probably never been so bad. So, I think they either need to stay in college longer, which I know we've talked about, or there should still be a developmental league for these players, because the only way you can get that experience is to play. And Bryce Young is so damaged now with his confidence. What's the best thing for him to do? Go and play 10 games somewhere where he can just get rep after rep after rep and get a feel for the game. And then at least the Panthers will know one way or the other. They'll know if he's going to make it or not. All right, let's move on to our games then for week 9. Starting our first one on Sky on Sunday. 6 o'clock kickoff. We're on air at 5. It's the Denver Broncos at the Baltimore Ravens. And suddenly, Phoebe, a Denver team that is 5-3 in what was supposed to be a rebuilding year for them under Sean Payton. And here they are with Bo Nix at quarterback, putting together a very nice season.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly how Sean Payton wanted it, right? You always want to under promise, over deliver. And so he came out there saying it's a development year, but actually he knew exactly what he was doing. He's going to look like the stud at the end of this, depending on how Bo Nix and the Broncos finish up. But they've been the kind of secret team that people haven't really paid attention to. I think because he said they were in development year. So people just left them to their own, which is probably the smartest thing that he could have done to keep the media attention off and just allow his young quarterback to build and develop. But I mean, not only is Bo Nix done a really nice job of again, developing every game, it's that Denver defense that has been phenomenal and keeping them in all of these games. I mean, they are a top 10 defense by far, and they're actually really enjoyable to watch right now with what they're doing and playing some big name teams.
Yeah, Bo Nix is one of those examples. He did play a lot in college. I think he's 25 years old. He's not one of those younger quarterbacks who's come out fresh. So, yes, he's had to develop along the way, but he's had a body of work that he can kind of lean on. Now he goes up against the team. Well, Phoebe, you would have normally said up against the feared Baltimore Ravens defense. But this team is led by its offense now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, they are the threat. They are the force of nature that is helping them to win games, with Lamar finding ways to, when being challenged to pass the ball, he is getting an A+ on that test. They obviously can run the ball as well, but his receivers are really coming into their own. Zay Flowers really understanding his role within this scheme. Rashad Bateman stepping up nicely. And then, of course, your tight ends that you have out there, Andrews and Likely, they've just really found a nice way to distribute the ball. And then defensively, there's just been issues. You think back to last week's game, that drop by Kyle Hamilton, which kind of changes the game. I mean, I know you're missing Marlon Humphrey, but they're not the same team that they've been known to be. You think that Baltimore, aggressive, in your face. So I think they need to get back to that if they want to really do well in the playoffs. But it's great to see the offense has established their identity so clearly.
Yeah, they have. They definitely Lamar's team. This is a step up in class for the Broncos as we pick this game. I'm going to go with Baltimore, given the game is in Baltimore. But I like what Denver have built so far. I'm very interested to see that continued Sean Payton, Bo Nix development there. But I'm going Baltimore. What about you?
Yeah, because they're in Baltimore and that's a tough place to play, I am going to say the same thing and go with them. But I do think that this Broncos defense is going to challenge them and give them a tough time.
All right. I just want to touch on Miami at Buffalo because this is not a big division game because Buffalo got a 4-game lead already and everyone else in the division is playing terribly. But from a Bills point of view, are they at the top table in the AFC along with the Ravens and the Chiefs? Because they're 6-2. They've won 4 of their games by 21 points or more. And I don't feel like we're paying that much attention to the Bills.
No, no, we're not. I mean, and Josh Allen, I mean, he at the moment has the most touchdowns before the age of 29, more than Mahomes. I mean, he is doing phenomenal things, and they've just strengthened their offense, bringing in Amari Cooper. They're doing really great work. I think again they've got struggles defensively, but if you're talking about top teams in the AFC, you're talking about Lamar Jackson, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes, you're talking
Mm.
about these quarterbacks. Josh Allen 100% is right there with them. I just think they do it in a less flashy way. And
Right.
I know that they've been able to get to the playoffs before, and then they just kind of lose it a little bit. And because ultimately, you're going to say Josh Allen's going to have to play Patrick Mahomes at some point, and that's where I think people lose faith at times. I don't lose faith, people.
Other people. That's where it
Other
ends.
people.
That's where it ends normally. But I mean, they do. I feel like these Bills are built a bit more now for that end of the season. They run the ball better, don't they? James Cook is more involved in that. It feels like it doesn't feel like Josh has to put the superhero cape on all the time and just go and play silly ball.
Yeah, and that's why it's been so great to watch him. I know we had our commentators curse last week where he hadn't thrown an interception, but I mean, if you thought about saying that last year, people would have laughed at you because he had thrown so many interceptions. So he's developed so much. The run game alleviates so much stress on him, but he still has the opportunity to make those magical Josh Allen throws that we love to see. And now you've actually got a receiving core where you bring in Amari Cooper, not saying he's a star, but he allows everyone else to play a role. So Keon Coleman's can step up, and that's what they've needed for so long. And that's how you put together a Super Bowl worthy team. It's just defensively with all their injuries, they're going to have to do some things for the trade deadline to really bolster their defense, especially at a depth perspective.
Yeah, let's move on to Chicago, Arizona. So I just want to touch on the Cardinals did to Miami what they did to the 49ers a few weeks ago. They kind of hung around, kicked a late field goal to win it. Kyler Murray was making some incredible plays, but I want to see the response from the Bears here as well, because I felt like as good as Caleb Williams was at Tottenham, I thought he looked frustrated, flustered, out of answers sometimes, and I'm not sure we were that impressed with Chicago's play calling and people to help him out. So for me, this is about the Bears' response against a team that can be very tricky to play.
I could not agree more. I mean, I remember us watching that game and thinking he's not making accurate throws. He has receivers. I mean, at one point, his top 3 receivers had only had 1 catch each. You
Mm.
can't survive like that. Yes, he need an element of the run game, but it was Caleb Williams on the day. He had this great presence where he was able to make adjustments at the line and he looked like he was taking command. And then it all just kind of fell out once the ball was snapped. And so I think they have a big job to do because also he knows that Chicago defense did a phenomenal job, right? They kept apart from the Hail Mary, they
Yeah.
kept Washington to 0 touchdowns. So they did their job. They kept giving Caleb Williams an opportunity to go down and score. And there were a lot of missed opportunities. So that everyone's going to have their eyes on them anyways after seeing, last week's finish. And they have to prove themselves. And Caleb Williams has to take this week to really, and the coaching staff, what are we doing to help this guy out? Because he
Right.
did not have any answers at the end of the day.
Our second game on Sunday on Sky is the Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers. So Detroit are currently the number 1 seed in the NFC. This game is at Lambeau Field. Obviously, the Lions are scoring points for fun. We have to wait and see with Green Bay. Is it Jordan Love? He's got this groin injury from last week. Or is it Malik Willis? And given how well they play and coach around whoever's at quarterback, like with Matt LaFleur's influence, does it matter? I mean, it does matter because Jordan Love's a great quarterback, but Malik Willis has done a pretty good job. Let's start there with the Packers side of this and how they're gonna have to score a lot of points, it seems, against these Lions.
Yeah. I mean, going into it, that's what you're going to have to do. It's going to have to be all hands on deck, everybody getting involved. I mean, because Detroit's defense is getting so much better as well. So Green Bay's going to have a lot of pressure on them. But Malik Willis and Matt LaFleur, if it is them, they have a game plan together where they've seen it work before. They know how to adjust. I mean, Matt LaFleur is one of the best coaches at being able to in-game adjustments to diagnose what's happening on the field. Now you still got Robert Saleh in the building who can kind of help and understand what's going on and give his advice in those moments too. Um, I'm not sure if Jair Alexander is going to play again because he got injured at the end of last game. But I mean, Xavier McKinney is just a ball hawk. I don't think I've seen him play at this level ever, or any DBs that are getting pretty much an interception a game. It's phenomenal. So those guys are going to have to help him. They're going to have to be getting those turnovers and really picking off Jared Goff.
There was a period in the NFL, you have to go back a little way, where the safety was like one of the premier positions in the league. And I think it's changed a little bit because maybe the middle of the field's more open. They're not dominating as much as they could from back there. You can see some of the best safeties in the NFL. If you like watching safeties, you're going to have Xavier McKinney, you're going to have Brian Brown, you're going to have Kirby Joseph. I mean, you're going to have players that are going to be, I mean, you be careful when you throw the ball down the field. Don't throw it late because both teams can come up with interceptions.
I know, and that's what's so incredible. I mean, they're such fun teams to watch right now. I mean, yes, both offenses have been great, but the defenses have made it so entertaining because you never know what could happen on a drive. You know how opportunistic these defenses are. And, the Green Bay defense are going to have to step up. Detroit are 5 for 5 in the red zone last game. I mean,
Right.
Those are big moments where they're going to have to make a play, punch a ball out. So it's staying locked in for every second, whether it's a run into the end zone trying to punch it out or in the end zone trying to get that interception against one of those receivers and Goff makes a mistake.
Detroit feel like a juggernaut at the moment. When you just feel like a team's finding ways. Last week they had 225 offensive yards and 262 return yards. They're finding different ways, but they're not finding ways in ugly ways. Like we talk about Kansas City, well, they find a way, but it's scrappy. It doesn't look. The Lions are prolific. They're scoring for fun. They look like they're having fun. And it just feels like if they can maintain, this is a Super Bowl winning team, not just a Super Bowl team. This is looking so good for them.
It's phenomenal. It's so exciting. I mean, you wouldn't think that the Lions can put up 52 points and Goff really didn't actually even have much to do with it. Right. I mean, it was wild and it's exciting and it's the way that we want to see football played. The run game is electric. You don't normally say that about a run game. Like, I enjoy watching Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They're such a fun duo to focus on. And then, like you said, they're making special teams exciting. Is he going to go for it on 4th and 1? Nobody knows. Is it a fake punt? Is it, and that's what it should be. It's I know it's not done for entertainment, but it really does bring people into the sport. And it's so great. And they've got such a nice thing going. They've got a phenomenal head coach in Dan Campbell. And what he's been able to do for the people in Detroit is just, I can't imagine what it must be like walking around the streets of Detroit right now, like seeing other Lions fans. You're just like, ah.
Yeah, exactly. This one's at Lambeau Field, but I'm picking Detroit to win. What about you?
Yeah, I just think they're too good. They're on a roll right now. I don't want to always agree with you, but they're just too good.
If we agree, we agree. It's fine. Let's quickly touch on Rams at Seattle. So this is not necessarily one of the biggest games of the week, but the reason I want to look at this is the Rams had a huge win last Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings. So they're now 3-4 in a division that has a top team at 4-4. So Phoebe, they went from a couple of weeks ago talking about potentially trading away Cooper Kupp and was Matthew Stafford available. I mean, can the Rams win this division? Can they do what they did last year, come out of their bye week and go on a playoff run?
I think they can. They have hope right now. They have Cooper Kupp back. They have Puka Nacua back. I mean, Puka, his first day back, has over 100 yards. I mean, it looks like he never stopped playing. I mean, and he was a number one target for Stafford in those situations. And again, we talk about that, the way the receivers opened up for each other. Demarcus Robinson looked like a really nice number 3 who fit perfectly into it, where he's struggled as of late. And then naturally you open up the run game for Kyron Williams. And so I think they did a really nice job. Great pass protection as well. They didn't face one sack against the Vikings, who's one of the top teams, in terms of getting after it. I mean, so I think they are in a really great position. Sean McVay's been here, done that before. He knows the right things to do. He knows, I mean, first off, it always helps when you get your top two receivers back, right? I mean, it makes you look good too, but it's fun schemes. It's they look like they were loving playing last week again, and having the team, the Avengers are back together.
Yeah, no, it felt like that. And Matthew Stafford maybe isn't always given the same attention as a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, but that was a reminder again. He is a special, special quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback as well. Let's wrap up with Sunday Night Football, Indianapolis at Minnesota. So this is be our final game of the three on Sunday on Sky Sports. Now this is I think this is tough for the Colts because, and we can just touch on this quickly. Obviously, Joe Flacco comes in. I think he makes them better, but they blow so hot and cold anyway. Now they've got to go to Minnesota. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I'm picking the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe Flacco can bring the team together. I think that they do a nice job. I mean, and the defense is starting to change up what they were doing. They played the Texans last. I mean, they were pressuring CJ Stroud 57% of the time. And if you look at the overall, not like it necessarily means anything between Colts and Vikings. Colts are 18-8. Colts leading to
Right.
Vikings as a historical piece. My biggest concern is the Vikings have lost their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw. So, they'll try to get after them a little bit. But I just don't know. I mean, Aaron Jones still is Aaron Jones. He looks great. They used him in so many different ways last week in the passing game, the running game. I still think that Vikings defense can just mess with somebody on a level that no other defense can.
Are you picking Minnesota?
I am. I am. I just think they're too good,
Right.
even with Sam Darnold.
I do think just for Colts fans going forward, I think this is the best move. I think Shane Steichen dials up some really good plays that I don't think Richardson saw the field enough to benefit from them. So maybe if not for this week, that's a tough environment for Sunday Night Football. But what a stage for Joe Flacco if he does do it.
Oh man, but he's not afraid of these moments. He's been here, done that before. He fits right in. He knows this game. I mean, he's already played and given that team life. So I think that Shane Steichen isn't excited about this. Joe Flacco, the rest of the team, they're excited. They've got a real shot here.
Absolutely. All right, so that's your week 9 slate. We're on air 5:00 on Sunday. First games kick off at 6:00. We recorded very early on this Thursday morning, so I'm off for another cup of coffee, and we're going to send you, Phoebe, off to a very busy day. I think it would just leave it there, leave a bit of intrigue.